welcome to Strictly Rangers. I'm Jacob Brown, joined here with my dad, and today we're going to go over the last few weeks of Rangers hockey. We haven't done a pod in a little bit, and we got some news today. Jack Johnson got put on waivers by the New York Rangers, and let's just say this, finally. We've been waiting. I texted you at work, Dad. I saw the tweet, and I texted yes in all caps. We've been waiting for this day since opening night. And it's finally here. So I don't know if this means that he's gone completely off the team. Maybe if he clears waivers, he goes to the taxi squad or the AHL. I don't know if this means he's completely out of the organization, but it at least means he's not going to play for the big club. And that's all we need to hear. That's all that really matters. So what do you think about that Jack Johnson subtraction earlier this morning?
Well, actually, I've been waiting for it since about 8 minutes after the ink dried on his agreement. Forget opening night. So I didn't understand it then. Never understood why he was out there on the ice. He was always just kind of lumbering around. Kind of looked like a better version of a men's league defenseman. And I'm being harsh. Yes, I mean number 3 overall pick 100 years ago. Never really fulfilled his promise, I don't believe, but it didn't make sense for the Rangers. I wish him well. If he's still, I don't know how it works with the waivers. I don't know if he's coming back or if it was just a financial move or whatever the deal is. But hopefully, it does indicate the Rangers' intentions in terms of whether or not he's going to be in the lineup.
Yeah, no, I mean, bottom line, it's just good that he's not there, and it opens up room for Tarmo Reunanen if they want to bring him in the fold. It looks like Braden Schneider and Nils Lundqvist are not going to be guys for this year. So at this point, just try out Reunanen. I think Brendan Smith's earned his spot in the lineup, at least for now. And Libor Hájek, his advanced stats, we don't really understand the advanced stats that much, but they're not too kind to him. He was worse than Jack Johnson in those particular stats. Just sub out Hájek.
Yeah, that's a few weeks ago, first of all. Second of all, I don't think that any of those advanced stats really take into consideration circumstances, all of the variables that go into when you're on the ice and when you're not on the ice. I know that Hájek doesn't take a lot of offensive zone faceoffs, which probably doesn't necessarily help his stats on that front, the metrics as it relates to all that. I don't know. I just see a guy who's not making a lot of mistakes. He's a steady guy.
He's physical too, which I like.
Yeah, not in a booming kind of way, but he takes the body he's stable back there. He doesn't look lost. Candidly, Brendan Smith gets into too much trouble, far more trouble than Hájek does. Hájek plays a very simple, straightforward game. Get the puck, wrap it around the boards, headman pass. He doesn't get too creative. Smith, if you'll notice, especially when he's got the puck down low, he thinks he's like turning into like the modern day Wayne Gretzky or like Paul Coffey. Like he waits too long to make a decision, and then it creates chaos because his passes get blocked. The defensemen have time to pinch. So when he has no pressure behind, down low with his own puck, he seems to struggle more. So it bears watching, and I think it's probably some of the things that the coaches see that will ultimately kind of derail his ability to be a long-term solution here. And we know the contract ends in a year and they don't want to pay him anyway, but still, we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. And, again, just bottom line, it's good that he's out of there. And, as for Hájek and Smith, they're not part of the future. So whoever Reunanen comes in for, if he is brought up to the NHL, then I think they at least deserve to give him a look. I don't think Reunanen is going to be a part of the future either, but at the very least, get him some trade value. And I think that's what they should do. So the last pod that we did was February 28th. I don't know if it was before or after the 4-1 Bruins loss, but I know we did talk about how will the Rangers perform during this quote-unquote easy stretch through the Sabres and the Devils. And they went 3-0 in those games. They beat the Sabres 3-2. The Devils 6-1 and then 6-3. So those were some positive signs. Those are teams you should beat. And at the very least, it wasn't like earlier in the season when you were losing to those teams and you're like, we do know we're at least better than this and we're still losing to these clubs. At the very least, the Rangers are proving that they're better than that. But then after that, the Rangers went on a slide. They lost 3 straight games, 2 to the Penguins, 5-1, 4-2. They looked pretty much lost, and then they got shut out by the Bruins 4-0. And, this comes in the midst of Igor Shesterkin going down. He went down in the Penguins game. Then you have Georgiev essentially shitting the bed for a few nights there. And, you're mixing in Keith Kincaid, which kudos to him. He had that 4-0 shutout on the 11th versus the Bruins on the road, and that was a nice win with Panarin coming back, Trouba, all those guys. But bottom line, I think what this is proving is the Rangers are right where they are, and they're better than the Sabres and the Devils, but they're not better than the Penguins, and they're not really better than anyone else in this East Division. They definitely have the potential to be. They definitely have the players to get there. But I think what this last stretch of Ranger games is showing us is they're not there yet.
Well, what it's showing is exactly what I kind of expected from this season, which is a young team that doesn't know necessarily how to win, doesn't have enough of the seasoned guys who have won elsewhere to infuse the locker room with that. I mean, Jacob Trouba didn't make any long runs with Winnipeg. And Zibanejad, same thing. Panarin's got a little bit of a pedigree, and you see the difference when he's in the lineup. Kreider's 5 or 6 years removed from having any impact on a run, but he's got that pedigree. But that's about it. I mean, there's really not a lot of guys on this team that understand how to win, how to turn the tide. The most disappointing losses were the Pittsburgh losses because they lost it. They lost to Crosby and they lost basically Sidney Crosby in both games to a certain extent, and they're just, even now in their development, they should be flat out better than Pittsburgh, but they can't get over that hump. And part of it is, in that first game, Shesterkin was just horrendous, absolutely horrendous. I mean, he gives up goals from 60 feet like I would.
Do you mean Georgiev?
Who'd I say?
Shesterkin.
Yes, my apologies.
Yeah.
I mean, Georgiev, he's just horrendous. I mean, he seemed like he doesn't work together. One thing that Lundqvist always did brilliantly was his focus was so precise that he didn't just stand there in the net and wait for the screen to go away. I mean, he was actively looking left and right and left. Georgiev's like, oh, there's a man in front of me. I'll look at his ass for the next 10 minutes. And then boom, the puck goes in the net,
Yeah.
He gets beat by long shots. He gets beat on weird angles. He overcommits. He's had several goals this year where he's like, I don't know. It's like he's on a joyride to the other side of the crease, and they put it behind him on the other side. Like he looks, for an NHL goalie that really had a great run last year. It's stunning to see how mechanically unsound he is, and
especially with Benoit Allaire.
Yeah, it's like it seems to rub off on everybody else, but I don't know. I guess goalies can get in a rut and so forth, but his positioning is off. He gives up too many goals, and we talked about this also, like why Julian got fired in Montreal, and I read a great article on that. It is Julian, right?
Yeah, Claude Julien.
Yeah. So he got fired up there, and everybody's like, "Oh, on the face of it, it didn't look like a good idea." And when you dig in the numbers, damn straight it wasn't a good idea, because in every metric that you would want to see, Montreal was in like the top 3 or 5 for the last 2 years, not just this year. And Corey Price, it's Corey Price, right?
Carey,
whatever his name is. I'm getting old.
Yeah.
But he's I'm telling you, my dad. I can't remember names.
Yeah.
but statistically, he's been flat out shit for the last couple of years, and it's turning games around. So you could argue that the Rangers didn't lose the first game in Pittsburgh. Georgiev lost it, and it was about a minute span there where they gave up 3 goals, and it's, as a goalie, you got to shut that shit down, especially one of those goals. But
and as a team, it's just deflating, because you're like, well, what are we going to do now? I mean, you give up those goals, and it's like, well, we're doing our job. So what do we have to do? Go out here and score 6 goals?
Yeah. And Kincaid, ride them as long as they can right now. If they really have aspirations and they give a shit about making the playoffs, then Georgiev cannot be the guy right now. It can't be a rotation until Shesterkin gets back, because he's just too unstable. And it's not about development at this point. He's not going to go on a 10 game run with a 95% percentage and all of a sudden become valuable as a trade chip. So if you want to win games, go with the guy that's been there, that's more mature. He's never been a stud, but he's 31. He's level-headed. He's probably more mechanically sound now than Georgiev could hope to be. And the Rangers can't afford more shit goals. I mean, that's how the start of their season really that's what derailed them early in the season with both goalies, and now Georgiev's back on that track.
Yeah, and that's the most disappointing part too, is that they didn't get the value for Georgiev that they could have gotten. We know that teams were interested in him. I mean, there's the Carolina Hurricanes, the Edmonton Oilers. They still don't have goalies that are up there. That's Edmonton's number one problem. Do you know how many guys on the Edmonton Oilers that the Rangers probably would have been interested in? You could have gone after what's his name, PRV. You could have gone after and made a package for Nugent Hopkins with Georgiev and a few other prospects. Who knows? And that's the window of opportunity that the Rangers had, and they decided to, let's wait and try and maximize the value even more. And that's just an instance where they might be getting a little greedy. Now, maybe there's a bright side to this, to maybe they don't have to protect Georgiev with the expansion draft coming up, and they can just say, okay, bye, go to Seattle. And there's no qualms about it. And it's kind of just like a lesson learned, and he's gone. But it's just upsetting because who knows what the Rangers could have got in a trade package for him. And so that is certainly disappointing. So there's also some other Ranger news coming out. Vitali Kravtsov is on his way to New York. He just posted a picture on his Instagram. He's on an airplane coming over to New York. Finally, the Rangers were thinking about playing him in that third game in the Carolina Hurricanes series in that weird playoff format last year, but they didn't decide to put him in the lineup. Right now, what we're hearing is due to COVID and all that, he's going to have to go through that first. Most likely going to go to the taxi squad, maybe the AHL for only a few games. And then by the end of the month, we're hearing maybe he's up in the NHL and in the lineup. And I got to say, I get the Rangers and their, I guess, fascination with Colin Blackwell, and he's on the second line for whatever reason. Take his ass out of the lineup when Kraftsoff gets in. I don't think there's any reason to take DiGiuseppe out because of the defensive value that he brings you. Lemieux's not coming out. Rooney better stay in the lineup, and Brett Howden should never even see the ice again for the rest of the season. And I think Kraftsoff, when he comes in, he should be in for Blackwell. And the disappointing part too is what's happening to Gauthier? He seems like he's out of the plans. I'd have him in over DiGiuseppe. So what do you think about the Rangers lineup decisions once Kraftsoff is in and ready to go?
I'll start with the Gauthier thing. I think it's just very strange. It really is. I mean, I read today that Howden was a healthy scratch for the first time.
Yeah, like how is that possible?
In 3-year career. Like, what the hell has that guy done to not have been sent some sort of message for the past 3 years? And Gauthier is like, he's like the bastard stepchild. I just don't understand it. I mean, the guy seems active. He seems involved. It's like, oh, sit that asshole, because when they can't figure something out. As far as Blackwell goes, listen, I mean, he's engaged. He's active. But to me, he's like a more offensive Jesper Fast, 5'9", 5'10", in that range, whatever Fast is. Fast was 5'11", maybe 6 foot. But I don't see how in the world. I don't think that Kraftsoff should come in for Blackwell. If someone's going to lose a spot, it should probably be DiGiuseppe or whoever else is on the margins there.
It could really only be DiGiuseppe.
DiGiuseppe or Blackwell or Rooney. I mean, I don't think.
But again, then you don't have a fourth line center, so Rooney has to stay in.
Yeah, I get it, but I mean, I just I would DiGiuseppe. I don't, and Blackwell. I'd be stunned if either one of those guys is part of this team, not necessarily because of what they that's even related to them. At some point, the Rangers have to go out and get that physical piece, that fourth line bruiser dude, or a couple of those lunch pail guys, and figure out what the top six is going to look like, whether or not they want a top nine of really relatively skilled guys. We've had this discussion in the past. They've got 8 or 9 guys that would compete for top 6 roles. normally on a lot
Well,
of
think
teams.
about it. I mean, when Kraftsoff comes in, right now the lines. This is how they said as of last night's game was Kreider, Zibanejad, Buchnevich, Panarin, Strome, Blackwell, Lafreniere, Hedel, Kakko, and then Lemieux, Rooney, DiGiuseppe. So what would most likely happen is Blackwell comes out of the top 6 at the very least. Because I don't see them inserting Kraftsoff in and putting him on the 4th line. Maybe they do just to get his feet wet. But I feel like what you should do, move Kakko back up with Panarin and Strome, because I don't know why he's not there right now. Why the fuck are they putting Blackwell in the top 6 when you could? I mean, it's just
that's why I think of him as the new Jesper Fast. Right?
Seriously,
it's like he was when 8 guys got injured. It's like, well, put Fast in the in the top on the first line or the second line. It's like,
yeah, like let's get our defensive checker in there. It's like, no, let Kakko grow. The only way he's going to grow is if you put him with offensive talent. I like him with Hedel and I like him with Lafreniere, but both of those guys are going through the same exact thing that Kakko's going through right now. So the only way to help them is move Kakko up, put him on the second line with Panarin. And to be quite frank with you, the way I would do it, and this is just me, and I think you'll probably agree with me because I know you play we both play the NHL 21 game, and this is how I have my lines. I do it on the video game. I have Kreider, Zibanejad, Lafreniere, then I have Panarin, Strome, Kakko, and then I have Buchnevich, Hedel, Kraftsoff. And I think that would be the best way to do it. That way you have Buchnevich at least, who I think would help Kraftsoff in terms of a cultural way because they're both Russian. It would ease Kraftsoff's transition to have someone that he can communicate with easier on the ice. You keep Kakko with that skill guy in Panarin, and you keep Lafreniere with a guy like Kreider and a guy like Zibanejad who can help him out on that first line. That's how I would do it in the top 9.
Well, this is why all roads lead back to the decisions that the Rangers have to make, not now, but in the offseason as it relates to Strome and Buchnevich at the very least, right? That is somewhere in the range of next year, because Buchnevich is, if he's going to be with the Rangers, he's a minimum of a $4.5 million guy.
He's not worth that now.
No. So, I mean, yes, he's contributing, but you got to go back to pedigree. He's 25 years old. He's been here for, I think, 4 or 5 years at very least. I don't know how long he's been here, but probably at least 4 years. You might want to look that up.
I'm going to, yeah.
So he's coming into his own right now, but he's expensive. The cap is what it is. Strome, I think the Rangers did as well as they could when they couldn't get rid of Strome and sign him to a small deal, years-wise. But people have got to go. And then there's the whole Eichel specter hanging over this whole thing. Like, which one of those guys is really not part of the future anyway, right? Is it Strome and Buchnevich and Kraftsoff and 6 picks go to Buffalo? I mean, I don't know what that looks like. You know what I mean? So it's really kind of a who knows thing right now as far as what it's just kind of getting reps. It's just getting these guys' feet wet in the NHL, getting them game experience. Which is why it's ultimately disappointing the way they seem to rag on Gauthier, because I don't understand how you don't see how a guy who's that big, that fast, with some skill, who's getting involved, who seems to create shit when he's on the ice, and he's always like the odd man out, and I don't understand that. Why you don't want to figure out at 22, 23 years old what you might have in 3 years with that guy, because you can't teach that size, you can't teach that speed. So raw tools with a good shot, with with a little bit of jam to his game. I don't know, why not? I know he's not. He's not necessarily super aggressive. He's not going to be Anderson that I wanted from Columbus. He's not got that mean streak, but shit. I mean, I actually know when he's on the ice. Whereas Howden, for all I knew, he could be a healthy scratch for the past 25 games. I wouldn't have known where the fucking guy was. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, and by the way, Buchnevich in his 5th season right now, so he'd be going into his 6th year. But and Buchnevich, to give him credit, 22 points, 26 games. I mean, that's not bad. That's almost a point-a-game player. But it's just, are you going to give $5 million to a guy when you know you have to pay everyone else within the next 2 or 3 years? And I don't think you do, unless it's a similar thing to Strome, where it's like, okay, We'll give you 2 more years at 4.5, and then we'll let you go. But I don't know. I mean, I agree with you. People do have to go because you can't just have 3 lines like that where, and yeah, could Kraftsoff be a nice physical guy on a third line? Sure. But you don't want that to be his focus. You want him to be able to focus on doing what he does best, which is scoring goals and being productive offensively. Kako on that second line, he ain't going to be your physical presence. On that first line, Kreider's physical, great. But if you've got Kreider, great. That's great that you have a physical guy. Second line, nobody. Third line, you have to hope maybe Kraftsoff can be that guy. And then he's not. He's not going to be that guy.
He's never going to be that guy.
He's 6'3", but that doesn't mean he's going to be going around pushing people around.
No, he's not that dude. If he was, then he'd be in the NHL already because he would have adjusted better to the NHL game.
Right.
But the thing with the Rangers is that like the kid, like you can call that third line that is right now Lafreniere, Hedl, and Kako. There's a tradition in the NHL where your third line is on really stacked teams is your kid line. It's kind of a thing that's happened over time with really successful teams. The Rangers just at this point aren't that successful team, and typically your kid line is viable as a strategy if you have bona fide go-to guys as your centers, 2 centers that you can just dial in up the middle, and your top 6 is established and predictable and stable and so forth. But the unfortunate reality is to have a kid line right now, it means Colin Blackwell is in your top 6, right? It means that your second line of Strome, Blackwell, and Panarin right now has, combined like 4 penalty minutes and like 1.5 fights and like less physicality than most high school teams. Like they're going to get, and again, I always project it to the playoffs. A line of Panarin, Strome, and Blackwell, which I don't think is what the intention is here, but that type of line will never work in NHL. It never will work in the playoffs when things get real. And I would argue that Zibanejad, Kreider, and Buchnevich also, because ultimately I think that Buchnevich, not even Zibanejad, is the weak link there because I just don't see him being a first line right wing when you've got Kako and Kraftsoff and they've played Lafreniere on that side. I don't see it. I mean, I might be wrong. He might be here for the next 10 years. But it's just a weird thing that I've said for a million years about this guy. I just don't see him as being the grit guy, the guy that that is going to perform in the playoffs. I just don't see it coming.
No, I agree with you 100%. So
they need. I mean, I've harped on it for over a year. They need to find. They're out there, but they need some variation of a less offensive Josh Anderson, right?
100%.
They need somewhere to throw in that lineup. And the one thing I will say about Gauthier, he kind of looks like way too bashful out there. Like he doesn't realize how big he is. He kind of has a little Kreider in him when it comes to between the whistles. Like he's physical on the puck. He takes the body well enough. He shakes off checks well enough. He's difficult to extract from the puck. But the between the whistles stuff is where you want a 6'4", 230-pound guy doing shit. Like Vigneault for all those years said we play whistle to whistle. Well, fuck you, Vigneault, number one. It's why the Rangers, basically got their dicks kicked in when it counted. I mean, they weren't able to push back. They weren't allowed to,
Yeah, now he's doing the same thing in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's amazing that he made that his motto when he went to Philly, that he doesn't want Philly to be known as the big bruising monsters. Yeah. That's literally the Flyers organization.
Yeah, well, I mean, if they win, the fans won't give a shit. But the point of the matter is this. Vigneault has never won with that philosophy. And if you look at who's in the East for the next, I would say at least, let's even dismiss Pittsburgh from the equation. Look at the 3 teams in the East that the Rangers will have to get through over the next, in their division, not even including Columbus, right? But just this year, who's in their division, and will be in their division or in their conference for the next 3 years, right?
Well, the normal Metro is Carolina, Washington, Pittsburgh, Philly, Rangers, Devils,
Islanders,
and did I say Columbus?
I don't know.
Yeah,
Bottom line is this.
Yeah.
Bottom line is this. In their conference, I think for the next couple of years, the Capitals, the Bruins, the Islanders are all going to be relevant, right? Columbus, I think, to a lesser extent, but those three teams and others will be relevant. But I'm talking about the style of play that becomes problematic to play against in the playoffs. Those three teams, what do? Between the whistles, they punch you in the mouth. They cross-check you. They spear you. They do, even in today's antiseptic NHL. These guys get under your skin, and they're physical. Sometimes it's just they come up and they push you against the glass to keep you away from their other guy, whatever it may be. The Rangers still walk away from that shit. They don't have enough sandpaper, black and blue guys that will just do that dirty shit. I don't mean dirty like dirty plays, but the hard stuff. And they need 2 or 3 of those guys, period. Otherwise, Kako, Hedel, Kraftsoff, if these guys are part of the future, they're going to be run all fucking night. Panarin, same thing. So they got to, and they know this. What's his face? Valaquette said it. They're not ready for that move yet to bring in those types of pieces. But, that's what you got to plan for. And maybe the Eichel trade clears the decks of a few of these fancy guys and brings in some of the more lunch pail guys.
We'll see. And we are hearing that the Eichel thing might not be until the off season. So, we don't want to get people's hopes up and say, oh, in April, we're going to have Jack Eichel in a Ranger jersey.
Yeah, it ain't coming. It ain't coming. And I Zibanejad is a mystery. I don't know what the hell's going on with that guy. He's on a little bit of a point uptick right now.
Well, we got to pimp out your take, Dad, that his stick is a little long because Brian Boucher on NBCSN during one of the Ranger games, he said his stick looks a little long, and you said that to me 3 weeks before that.
Yeah, it's like he's spearfishing out there, or he's got like a fucking pole vaulter's pole. I mean, it's and he's still shanking one-timers. And I can tell you
that's the most frustrating part.
I mean, it's not just he's not just getting them on net. He's hitting fucking like ground balls. It's unreal. It's unreal. He did it again yesterday. I mean, it was a 4-0 win, or maybe 2 games ago. I don't know what it was. In the right circle, he fucking hit a little ground ball left of the net. It wasn't even and when your stick is too long, it changes everything. And so maybe I'm wrong, but maybe Boucher's wrong. I don't know. It just looks weird. And I don't know why the fuck you would adjust anything
after that season.
What was that?
After that season.
Exactly. After last season and a half.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, okay, boom, hit the easy button. He's a fucking superstar. Let me go out and get a 14-foot fucking stick and shit the bed.
Yeah, no, it's unreal. And obviously, we wanted to point out too that it was very nice to see Artemi Panarin back in the lineup. I mean, right when he comes in, it's just a difference on the ice. And I was telling you, I mean, after not seeing him for a while, and I watched the highlights of all the other teams, I don't see anyone in any highlight reel other than McDavid, Draisaitl, and Panarin that impressed me, and Patrick Kane, that impressed me in terms of stick handling ability and puck movement and passing. I think Panarin's top 5 in that category. He really, when you go a while without seeing him and then you watch other highlights, you go, you know what? We got to appreciate this guy a lot more because he is a true top 10 player in the NHL.
Well, no doubt. He does things with the puck that are very subtle. And creates time and space for himself. The game, such a cliche, but the game slows down for him. And he's been doing it longer than Adam Fox, but Adam Fox has some of those tendencies. But I will say this: Adam Fox tried a little dipsy doodle in the last game or the game before, and he got fucking laid out. And that's in a regular season game. So so I mean, he's gonna.
There's pros and cons to everyone. Let's just say that.
Yeah. Hopefully, I mean, listen, he's obviously an incredibly smart guy, right? So you don't go to Harvard because, you're struggling to spell cat. But, at the end of the day, he's going to have to figure out whether or not that game translates to the playoffs. I think Panarin has a pretty decent playoff production record. I don't really know off the top of my head, but
I'll look at that in a second.
Yeah, but we'll
But yeah, I mean, Fox third on the team in assists, 2 goals, 13 assists on the year. So I mean, he's been pretty incredible. But yeah, I mean, it's just
Well, he's no Neil Pionk, that's for sure.
oh yeah. No, if you're a Ranger fan listening to this and you're part of that sect that is distraught at losing Neil Pionk, just stop. I mean, please, 5 years from now, come talk to me because I don't see this guy being a major contributor in 5 years. The only reason that he is because he's the only offensive minded defenseman other than Josh Morrissey on Winnipeg. They're the only two guys. He's the number one defenseman on the power play. That's how you rack up points. That's it. And on the Rangers, he would be the third pair defenseman on the right side right now. He wouldn't be on the power play. It would be Fox on one power play point. You have Zibanejad on the point. They use Trouba. They use Miller even now. So Pionk wouldn't even be on the power play if he was with the Rangers. So and he's not a physical guy. He's not big. He's just not valuable in terms of a long-term play. So I get it. He'd be the third highest scorer on the Rangers right now. Who cares?
No, it was I would say an amateurish take by whoever the hell that was to suggest that Pionk's run right now is somehow a condemnation of the choice to deal him for Trouba. Or in that deal. I don't think it was 1-for-1, but whatever it was, the point of the matter is where does he project in this Rangers organization? And we've talked about it a million times. There's probably a significantly higher expectation attached to Lundqvist than there ever was to Neil Pionk. So the Rangers already have, the next Neil Pionk in their
Schneider.
And Schneider. And I don't think Lundqvist makes this fucking team in the long term because we've said it a million times. You don't need Fox and Lundqvist as your two of your three righty defensemen in a time when the playoffs roll around. It's just they don't need that.
The only thing that justifies it to me is if Matt Robertson is a big deal, and you compare him up with Robertson, who's 6'4", 230. And, it provides him some sort of protection, but that's the only thing that justifies it to me.
Maybe. I think, I look at it and I say, first round pick, if Schneider is still here and he doesn't go, in any deal for Eichel or whatever the hell happens, I'll go to town all day with a 6'2", 200-something pound, mean motherfucker on that line, on that backside. That's 2 out of 3 defensemen on your right side that are physical. That would make a minimum of 2 out of 3 of your defensemen on the left side physical because at least Lindgren, tries. And Miller's big enough to handle himself. I'd like to see.
And then if you throw in Robertson, right?
Well, yeah, if he's got the chops, if he can actually play hockey, and we'll see. And if he's mean, does he have a little edge to him?
Well, he plays in the WHL, which is generally known as a high-scoring, very highly physical league. So you would think so. But at the same time, we've talked about it. Brett Howden scored 50 goals in the WHL. So I think that tells you all you need to know about that league. And remember, too, Ryan Gropp, he was that high. Yeah. He played in the WHL, and he didn't even see a game in the NHL. So take it with a grain of salt with those WHL guys for sure.
Yeah. And remember, listen, the Rangers have to get adults in the room at some point. Guys that have done it elsewhere, that have taken, have had long runs, and that are still either in their prime or very close to approaching their prime. They need, a 26, 27-year-old dude that can be here and productive for 5 or 6, and they're out there. They are definitively out there. Guys that nobody knows their names other than the coach and their moms. And they're all over the NHL, and some of them are going to be available because the cap is what the cap is, and teams are going to have to make hard choices, but with the whole Seattle Kraken thing going down, so it's going to be the Rangers just need that. They need a stable, stay-at-home defenseman on the left-hand side that I would prefer a 6'2", 6'3", with a little beef and a little edge to him, so that when whatever it may be, Bergeron and Marchand or Ovechkin or all these, whatever it may be.
Yeah, Tom Wilson,
guys will stand up to those dudes, right? That can give a little bit of it back. Ovechkin and Tom Wilson, they're aberrations. There's very few people on skates on the planet that can stand up to those. I don't think there's anybody there that would want to tussle with Ovechkin. I think there's a combination of him being a big dude, and I think he's a little bit psychotic. I think if Ovechkin was there. Yeah, I think he would be like, I don't know, like, if this was 500 years ago, he would be a Cossack, rampaging through the countryside, chopping people's fucking heads off, I just think he's touched in the skull, that dude. So I don't think anybody wants to fuck with him, but same with Wilson. So, but you need somebody that can, at the very least, beat up their version of the guys that they're beating up on our, you know what I mean? So at least maybe it equal, and then the dinosaurs fight it out at some point, right? There'll be some, Schneider is probably going to have if he becomes, if he plays for the Rangers, he's going to have a number of years fighting out with Ovechkin on that off wing. I mean, that's just going to be his job, and you need a bull over there.
Yep. So let's move on to this. So I read an article the other day. It was top 5 Ranger defensemen of all time from the hockeywriters.com. They do a great job, by the way. They cover every team, and they have very in-depth analysis. So they gave their top 5, and I'm not really equipped to give a top 5 because, I've been a Ranger fan since 2010, but I know, Dad, you've been watching since you were a kid and way back in 1940. And so here's the top 5 from this website. So they went Sergei Zubov at number 5, Ron Greshner at number 4, Harry Howell at number 3, Brad Park at number 2, and of course Brian Leetch at number 1. So I know, Dad, he's your favorite player ever, so he's going to be your number 1. But what are your 5 through 2?
Yeah, I have to just dismiss the whole Harry Howell thing, and I know that it makes me prejudiced in some ways to the old school guys, but I just can't take seriously guys being in a top 5 from the 1950s. I mean, or whatever he was. I mean, Harry Howell played from 1953 through 1976. I mean, in 1976, this was still like a beer league compared from a skill perspective. When you look back at old tapes of them playing in the 70s, and I mean, like, everything is relative. I get it. They were the best in the world at that time.
Yeah, but now who knows?
And I think, and in some situations, you've got to accept the notion that there's less validity that there's complete validity to connecting the eras when you judge people, right? Things change.
A good comparison to it is the NBA. When you're ranking the all-time players and everyone wants to go, oh, what about Bill Russell with all of his championships? He's got way more than Jordan. You can't even compare that to 90s basketball. So it's very similar in that sense that the game just changes over time.
Yeah, and Will Chamberlain, you can't take anything away from the guy. Obviously, he was a brilliant athlete, but I don't think he had a game in the NBA with 100 points. He scored 100 points in a game.
Come on, yeah.
And like he was just why? Well, he was playing against a bunch of like 6'1", 6'2" inch, like sorry if this offends anybody, but for the most part, white guys who couldn't even jump up to his shoulder, much less defend against him. So. It's just there's something to be said that the eras have to be taken into consideration. Like, I think that like a Babe Ruth would translate from a skills perspective into the modern game, but he wouldn't hit 60 home runs. He wouldn't have a 343 career average, right? There were things that contributed to those things, to that reality. Like literally, he's playing 5 or 6 teams a year. I mean, if or some small version, you know what I mean? Less pitchers, no relief pitchers. Guys threw 8, 9 innings no matter what. So by the 3rd or 4th time you see that guy, his arm is rubber, and you're taking advantage of it. So, but in hockey, there's such a massive difference between even the 90s and today collectively across the board in terms of skating ability, in terms of conditioning and all these things. So to suggest that Harry Howell is somehow in the top 5 defensemen in Rangers history. A, it's a really pathetic commentary on the Rangers as an organization. And B, I think it's retarded. I don't get it. So if I'm going to have a top 5, it's more like a top 3.5, to tell you the truth. I mean, Leach and Zubov, without question, they're 1 and 2. Greshner, I saw him long enough, and you look at him statistically before he got injured, I think he would have been up there statistically and had a far deeper impact. And candidly, he might have been, if he was completely healthy, he might have been a difference maker in the early 80s against the Islanders in terms of what he could have contributed, but his back just didn't hold up. So I'll throw him in there out of respect for what he could have been. But, Brad Park, 8 years as a Ranger, I get it. But again, started 19, whatever the hell that was.
Brad Park.
Brad Park was.
Yeah, he was drafted in 1966. Yeah.
Right. So, he had 8 years with the Rangers. I'll do a little bit of math right here. He averaged 64 games. In those 64 games, he averaged 13 goals, and he averaged 39 assists.
Oh, God.
For a total of 53 points.
Oh, God. And that's number 2 on this list.
Yeah. And so he's a Hall of Famer, no doubt. But I've seen old tape of him play. And he went on to Boston, and he was he had 2 brilliant years with the Rangers where he scored, 82 and 73 points. Nothing to sneeze at, no doubt. And then he went to Boston, and in Boston he had a 67-point season and a 66-point season.
Yeah, but that's not Rangers.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I'm saying, in terms of all-time great, he was, what do you have? He had 896 points in 1,100 games.
Yeah, I mean, that's
certainly nothing to sneeze at. Not horrible by any stretch. But the bulk of he played all of his young years with the Rangers and the bulk of his career with Boston. So I'm torn on Brad Park. They say that he would have won a bunch of Norris trophies if Bobby Orr wasn't in the league. So maybe so, but I struggle with that one. I have a closer connection with the idea that Jeff Bukaboom should have consideration in the top 5, not based on skills, but based on the fact that Brian Leach would have been murdered if Jeff Bukaboom wasn't on the ice with him. I mean, Bukaboom was like 6'4", 6'5", 230 at the time, and he was his bodyguard. And so nobody fucked with Leach. So Leach wouldn't. I don't think Leach would have been necessarily Leach, candidly, in his prime if he didn't have that bodyguard out there with him. And then on the fringes of it all, a really exciting little player, Richie Landon, for old Ranger fans. He was a 5'7", 5'8", 8-inch, I think Finnish guy, Finn, who very dynamic. I think he had an 80-something point season at one point, and he was there for the Herb Brooks years when they played that open kind of wheeling dealing thing, and he was exciting to watch. And so. There are probably people out there that say Harry Howell and Brad Park, they're not ahead of Ray or Rich Landon. I get it. I understand it. But again, Bukaboom for the bodyguard piece and Ray Rich Landon from the skill perspective. I mean, I think Brad Park, I think if you tied like a motor, like a boat motor to his ass, he still never would have caught Rich Landon on the ice. Let's just put it that way. So
is there any consideration whatsoever to Gerardi or Mark Stahl?
I would say Gerardi has to be in that consideration, no doubt about it, as the defensive defenseman. Stahl, if not for the injuries, he'd be up there. But I would put both of those in there ahead of Howell, without a doubt. And now that I take a step back, I would put both of those ahead of Rich Landon too. So
I mean, they had amazing careers with us.
Yeah, and they were there for a great run when this team was really successful.
Yeah,
and on the periphery, Harry Howell versus even Ryan McDonough for the 3 or 4 years where he was productive. Like I don't know. Harry Howell was, it was like your grandfather fucking skating around the ice. There was just no comparison to the skill sets then to now. Just doesn't compute.
What about your favorite Brady Shea?
Yeah, well,
Yeah, he's number one, right?
Yeah, well, no question.
Yeah.
Well, he's got that one big hit to his record. Unfortunately, it was on the guy who probably used to sit next to in the locker room. So before he went to Carolina.
Yeah, of course. But just hearing you talk about that, and there's some optimism for Miller and for Fox and for Schneider. If these guys are the real deal, who knows? I mean, these guys can end up as all-time New York Rangers greats, and I think Fox is on his way. I think Miller, with the way that he's been playing, he scored a goal the other night. He's just been tremendous. I mean, we haven't talked about him during this pod, but he is blown away. I mean, I remember when we came on before the season and we were like, I don't think people realize how good this guy can actually be. And even when I was saying that, I didn't think he'd be coming in right off the bat with zero issues. Like, there's not a gaping issue in his game. He goes out there. You'd think he's already been in the league for 3-4 years.
Incredibly mature, self-confident, and why not, right? He's bigger than most of the guys in the league, and he'll probably always be bigger than most of the guys in the league. He's just a beast of a man, and who just happens to be able to skate incredibly well, who's got great hands. He'll probably learn over time how to pick his spots physically. I would like to see him be more overtly physical. He does a lot of finesse things. He negates players with physicality, but I'd like to see a little bit of a meaner streak in him. But if it's not in his character, I'll deal with it over time. But and Adam Fox, for all the shit that I give that guy, I'll say this from a skill perspective, maybe not. And this is a reach, but he's like kind of like he's a less accomplished version of Brian Leach. But that the thing is, the reason why Leach was brilliant, Zubov was brilliant, because you put them in the NHL today, they would still be fantastic. They both had the skating ability and all of the other things that you need. They wouldn't be 100-point guys and all that stuff because those defensemen are gone. But they would be whatever the equivalent is of brilliant defensemen today. And Fox, I think, has a lot of the tendencies that Leach does, or did, I should say. I don't know if he's as good of a skater, but he's a pretty damn good skater. And I don't know if he's going to be as good a defender as Leach ultimately wound up being. Leach is
a Hall of Famer. I mean, that's a hard thing to do.
Right. I just see certain tendencies. That's all. And I think Brian Leach would be closer to Adam Fox if he played today, but just a better version of Adam Fox today. Maybe a much better. I don't know. And again, I'm maybe going out on a limb right here, but I just see certain tendencies.
Well, hey, believe me, there's Ranger outlets that have made those articles already. So you're not.
I get it. I think it's a stretch. I think it's a stretch because the thing is that Leach could do all the things that Adam Fox could do, and there's a lot of things that Fox can't do that Leach did. And one of the things is this, Leach he could dipsy doodle at all times. He just did less of it. And he didn't get lined up a lot. And that, of course, was indicative of Bukaboom being out there, which in the long run, when you really break it down, as nice as a pairing as Fox and Lindgren have been.
Yeah, put Miller there, please.
Yeah, really, yeah. Seriously. I mean, put Miller in
front. Because then Lindgren's protected by Trouba if you pair them up.
Right. Or True. So it would be Trouba and Lindgren, and which would be a nice physical pair, and then you would have Miller and
Fox.
And Fox, and then Schneider and whoever the hell takes over the left side of the other.
That's how I would do it. Pair. So before we go, one last topic, because I know this is after every Ranger loss, I go in the comments on Ranger Twitter posts and I see the barrage of fire David Quinn posts. Just stop. Can he control Georgiev being what he was the last few games? Can he control Igor Shesterkin not being there? Could he control Artemi Panarin having to leave for Russia for 2 or 3 weeks? This is a young team. Nobody expected them to make the playoffs. I mean, I went out on a limb because Steve did, and I said the Rangers would make the playoffs, and he baited me into it. But I mean, no one expected them to be anything. There are players that are making progress. I'm not on the fire David Quinn train. I'm just not. What I will say is this: the one thing that bugs the shit out of me, he does not keep the same lines together. The only way you create chemistry is if you keep the same guys together. I don't understand why mid-game, or not even mid-game, seems like every period during the period he's switching up forward lines. That's something he has to stop. But other than that, I like him so far.
Well, the jury's out for me, candidly. I don't. You don't know until you know. You can't say a guy can't do something. If he hasn't had the horses to do it. I don't know. This is an incredibly young team, and I think he's the right coach for a young team, based on his college pedigree. But it might very well be when this team is on the cusp. Mid next year, when the expectations are higher, when the dust is settled on the lineup, going into next year, for the most part, I think the Rangers are going to put the pedal down. I think the offseason is going to be very active. They potentially have a shitload of money coming off the books. I think that they're going to say enough is enough. The rebuild is over. We've got enough talent. Who's ever left over after whatever big trades they make, the kids, the gloves are off. Lafreniere is going to be expected to be a major contributor. Kakko as well. If Heedle's still here, it's no more baby gloves for him. I think this is going to be a really, really impactful offseason. And so I think going into next year, David Quinn is going to have a lineup that the brass says you've got, or going to think you've got to win with this crew.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So development's over. Go fucking win something, right? Make the playoffs, win a round, be competitive. And if they start off shit in the bed, if they have long runs where they just can't do it, and he won't last next season. That's just New York. And that's just the reality of it. And it's unpersonal. I admire the guy. I think he's a straight shooter. But he might be best suited for this version of the Rangers, and maybe not the next iteration that is probably about whatever it is, a season away, right?
Yeah,
the one that has all the expectations.
Yeah, do we really trust him to lead us into the playoffs? Is the question. That's really where it's at.
Yeah, it's a tough thing. You don't. That's one thing about a guy who's a rookie coach who's got very little NHL experience. Again, perfect for the Heedles, the Kakkos, Lafrenieres, the Adam Foxes, the Lindgrens. First of all, he coached half these fucking guys as it is. It seems right. At some point, or coached against them in college. So he knows them all. So again, perfect. These are all children still to a large extent. So, but
what I would do is honestly, the only way I'd say bye to Quinn after this year is if Claude Julien's not picked up, because I think he's the guy you get if you have aspirations of winning. And like you pointed out with Montreal, all those stats where he was top 3 in the league, you give him a goalie. I mean, we've seen what he can do with Boston. I'd hire Claude Julien in a heartbeat.
Well, Claude Julien is that perpetually grumpy fuck, right? So I think when a team is expected to win, you put a guy like that behind the bench, right? Yeah. A guy who's A, won it, B, is perpetually pissed off and demanding, and has incredibly high standards. I don't know if Quinn's got that kind of gravitas right now as a coach, right? So, yeah.
I mean, hey, that's sorry to interrupt, but that's what Florida did. They hired Joel Quenneville. Calgary just fired their head coach. They hired fucking Sutter, who's been out of the league for 3 years now. It's just what you got to do. You got to bring in winners.
Well, hey, listen, it's very similar to what the Rangers did the year they won the Cup, right? I forget who the guy was right before. I think it was I'm trying to think of his name. What's the Rangers coach? I think Neil Smith was GM. Who was the guy? Nelson. Look it up for me.
Okay.
The Rangers head coach in 92, 93.
All right, so I'm checking this out now. But yeah, I mean, the point you were making is it was right before they hired.
Yeah. So they brought in Messier in 90. I'm going to get this right now.
Ron Smith, by the way.
Okay, but it wasn't really Ron Smith. It was
before
Roger
that. It
Nielsen.
was Roger Nielsen.
Right. So it was Roger Nielsen in 90-91. And then in 91-92, Mark Messier was his first year, and Roger Nielsen had a 50-win season with Ron. So they had a 105-point season with Roger Nielsen. In 92-93, he was still there, and that's when they shit the bed. Somehow they went to a record of 34-39 after in 91-92 winning 50 games. So you could have maybe given him the benefit of the doubt and said, okay, let's go for it. Maybe you can right the ship. But they went out and got Mike Keenan in 93-94. And Mike Keenan he hadn't won the cup at that point, but he had taken the Blackhawks and the Flyers, I think, to the finals at one point. And he was a drill sergeant. He was a mean motherfucker. He was not. I don't remember seeing him smile until they actually won the cup. And then it was the combination of him and Messier in that room that changed the expectations. And he was gone after that season. He left after that. It was a very controversial thing. I think he actually quit the Rangers and signed with the St. Louis Blues. Like, he signed a contract with the Blues. I think actually may have even breached his contract with the Rangers. It was just weird because it wound up with the Rangers actually getting players in exchange from St. Louis. So it was a big wacky thing. But I think he probably looked at it and said, it's been 54 years since they won the cup. I show up, we win it. It's not getting any better than this. I'm getting the fuck out of Dodge. You know what I mean? But again, getting back to the Julian thing, look, been there, done that, right? Disciplinarian expectations, won in the East, which is really, really a big deal in these two conferences. So I think as much as it's sad to say, I think David Quinn, when you really unpack it, is kind of a stopgap for get the young players ready to go, and then bring in Julian. He says, "Sorry, kids, but none of you have a fucking leash. Show up and do your jobs."
Yeah, exactly. So, all right, yeah. The last thing I'll go over here is what the Rangers are doing after this podcast in terms of their schedule. So they get the Flyers on Monday night and Wednesday night. So they're both home games. Then they go to Washington on back-to-back nights on the road. That's tough. Not going to lie. I mean, you're going 4 games where you're going to have to play 100%, and I wouldn't be shocked to see us drop 3 out of 4. I mean, it's looking like one of those weeks. The good thing is the Rangers get the Flyers at home both nights, so that at least, now that there's fans there, there's that sort of cushion. But and Carter Hart, by the way, I completely nailed that one on the Hockey Pod, that he's the most overrated goalie in the NHL. He's certainly playing like it, but yeah, I mean, you're going to struggle those 4 games. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, it's big boy time, and the Rangers aren't big boys yet. It's that simple. I mean, they'll catch people by surprise, and their talent will bubble up. And if they get teams that aren't really ready for them, then they'll beat them. But listen, it's like the Boston game. The Boston manhandled the night before, and then probably said. Probably took a little bit of a day off during the day the next day. Thought that would be an easy ride, and the Rangers struck early, and it was a different game.
Yep. So, all right. So that'll do it.
I'd be interested to see what Panarin makes a difference, because they were saying yesterday the Rangers was 4-7 without him in the lineup. So but then again, they're what are they overall? I mean, they're 2 games below 500.
Yeah, right? 11, 12, and 3.
Right. So in real sense, they were what were they? They were 3. So they were 500 with him in the lineup. So
yeah,
or 1 game over, whatever. But it's a different. I mean, it's a huge difference, and so we'll see how that plays out.
Yes, we will. So, all right, that'll do it for this episode of Strictly Rangers. We'll be back next week after a bunch of games get played. Strictly Yankees. Mark Papaleo and I are going to record that tomorrow. It'll come out for you guys Steve's got a little bit of stuff going on, so we're going to have Strictly Hockey and Strictly Baseball soon. I know there's been a break for those two pods, but they will be back. And Strictly Sports, we got to do one soon as well. We're approaching NFL free agency on Wednesday. And actually, Drew Brees just announced his retirement as we were recording. So that's that's some big news. And he's certainly headed for Canton. The only thing I'll say about that is I'm shocked he didn't wait until June, because I heard if he waited till June, he would have saved the Saints a shit ton of cap room. But maybe he just wanted to get it over with and retire. But certainly,
I don't get it. I don't get that. Why, if he waits till June, what does that mean?
I have no idea why, but there's a rule in the league where if you retire later, there's benefits to the cap for the team.
Okay. Right.
Yeah. So I don't know what it is, but we'll see. So. Yep, that'll do it for this pod. You can check this out on iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. We also have the visuals on YouTube as well. For my dad, I am Jacob Brown, and we will see you next time.